Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Monday Musings-Danny SportsWrap, and this is a success and failure edition of Monday SportsWrap as we look at the situation with the coronavirus, and of course we'll talk some about that. You can't talk about anything these days without that being a part and parcel of what we talk about. But as a community and basically as a nation right now, we're not really succeeding as far as the coronavirus is concerned. And in that context, sports are working more and more towards trying to return to play in an environment where they're trying to create a better environment, a more successful environment in battling COVID-19 than the society as at large. And we just saw a record day on Sunday in Kansas City of tests that were positive, and they've been setting record after record over the past few days. That has resulted for most of the area now in mandatory mask requirements. Johnson County is still an outlier on that, at least currently. You would think if everybody else is doing it, they'll come around. And basically that's a reaction to the fact that given the suggestion that maybe wearing a mask and social distancing and doing all the things that are suggested didn't really take with people, I have an analogy for it coming up. We've had to move to more draconian measures again, and hopefully this particular step will result in the fact that we don't have to go back to a complete shutdown type of situation as well, as far as businesses and people being advised to stay at home and all those type of things, which have been loosened, well, we have to say unsuccessfully, because the public has not reacted well to it. In that context, we see sports slowly but surely trying to return to play, and the success of it has been decent in some areas. We don't know in some other areas because it hasn't come up yet. We will soon be playing MLS soccer. We will relatively soon be playing Major League Baseball, and we are still hoping in all these cases, and relatively soon we'll be playing NBA basketball, all within the month of July, which is just a few days away. So all we can do each and every Monday and each and every day in our real lives, but each and every Monday in the context of Monday Musings, Danny SportsWrap, we observe and we opine. And hopefully I'll be able to do that a little more successfully than some others have in other areas. Not that they have opined unsuccessfully. It's just more behavioral that we have fallen short in, and we'll see if in the next step we can have a little bit more success there. And these leagues will have a little bit more success and maybe take a page from some of the leagues around the world that have returned to play in relatively successful fashion. All that's part of the mix coming up as we continue with another Monday where we can't just talk balls and strikes and scores and touchdowns and signings, because there's too much going on. We're visiting with Larry Marshall, former Chiefs defensive back and punt returner and now a Chiefs ambassador. Larry is a former pro football player with the aches and pains that come with that, and moving on in age as we all are. What do the Canaway CBD products do for you?
It's been a great relief for me. Being a punt and kickoff returner, collisions were a mainstay of my career, and these Canaway products, the salve especially, has really helped me try to get through every day with the aches and pains that I've had over a career of 7+ years in the NFL.
I get similar benefits as well, particularly with my back. Certainly wasn't a football player. What's the best way for our listeners to get more information about the great products themselves?
Well, I'm so enthused about it, Dana. They just contacted me at larrymarshall.canaway.com, and I can give them all the information they need to help them get through the day as well.
Start gaining all the benefits that Larry and I do from the trusted and reliable line of Canaway products. As Larry said, visit larrymarshall.canaway.com and get information on all the great products from Canaway.
Hi, this is Matt Llewellyn from 23rd Street Brewery. Thank you, Kansas City, for supporting all the local restaurants during this time of crisis. Starting Monday, June 1st, the 23rd Street Brewery will be open our regular hours from 11 o'clock a.m. to 9 o'clock p.m. every day of the week. For dine-in and patio service, if you can believe that, we're open. During this phase, we will adhere to the Douglas County recommendations for restaurants, and please see our website or our Facebook page for details. Most importantly, we want all of our guests and staff to stay safe, and together, we will all get through this.
My friends at Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture are among the most accomplished and trusted clinics in the nation. Only one clinic has been rated in the top 5 in all 3 categories of chiropractic care, acupuncture, and rehabilitation, and that clinic is ASFCA. They have locations in Olathe, Overland Park, Prairie Village, Belton, and Lee Summit. Doctors Brad and Christina Woodle and their accomplished team of doctors and therapists will treat you like family, for the simplest of injuries to the most complicated conditions to avoid surgery. Whether you are seeking treatment for an injury or just looking to stay healthy and fit, this is the place for you. And it's been the place for me for almost 2 years now. I've been a strenuous daily exerciser for years, and as time goes on, that takes its toll. But regular appointments at Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture have helped keep me ticking on, and even as the years pile up, their regular care has allowed me to keep to my regimen and feel great. If you want to feel the same, give them a call or visit them at asfca.com/Danny. They accept all insurances and are open Monday through Saturday, and make sure to mention that Danny Clinkscale recommended Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
Welcome back to Monday Musings, Danny Sports Wrap, and there's going to be quite a few people who are not going to be particularly happy that they are required to wear a mask when they enter a public building or a restaurant or a store, and I know that firsthand because I've seen so many examples of settings where virtually nobody was wearing a mask, and there are other settings where you're saying, hey, the people here are doing pretty well. And in some cases, people are probably thinking, well, why are they all wearing masks? I'm not wearing a mask, and I don't think we should have to wear a mask. Well, now, in many cases, you have to wear a mask, or you're violating the law per se. I don't think you're going to be sent to jail for this type of thing. But store owners, I was talking to a guy at a convenience store yesterday, and he said that his job is going to be a difficult one because he's going to be placed in the position of not allowing someone to enter his store without a mask or covering. And let's face it, if you haven't been going around with a bunch of masks in your car like I have, then you will be in a situation where you're going to show up at the front door having forgotten, probably don't have a mask in your possession, and you're not going to be happy. And I went to a gathering last week just as an example of how we haven't been doing well, if that's the way you want to put it. That probably depends on your point of view. I went to a little gathering of people for a marketing type of deal, and there were about 40 people there, and virtually nobody had a mask. I entered carrying a mask in my back pocket, and I'll tell you what, when you go into a place where nobody is wearing a mask and it's a social setting, there's a lot of peer pressure. You really don't want to be the only person wearing a mask, and I wore it sporadically, and there are other examples of what was going on in this particular setting. A few ladies who hadn't seen me in a while were looking to perhaps have a slight hug to welcome me back to seeing each other again. But at least at the outset of that little exchange, they said, "Are you hugging?" And I said, "No, I'm not hugging." And in those cases, they didn't look particularly happy. It was almost like a reaction of, "Oh, you're that guy." And many of the guys there would reach out their hand as if they wanted to shake hands, and I would respond with a no touch fist bump gesture. And I'd say that the reaction to that broke down into three pretty separate and equal categories. In about a third of the cases, I think there was a realization on their face that, oh yeah, that's what we're supposed to be doing. And another third of that, the people thought I was kidding. And then the third were people who just didn't like what I had done and wanted to shake my hand and thought I was just that guy again. So there are all kinds of settings, and I'm sure you've seen them, where basically nobody is doing any of the things that were suggested and now are going to be made more mandatory. And the only one really that's being made mandatory right now is wearing a mask. But if these issues continue to spike, we have 31 states out of the 50 right now where cases are going up. We had been in a situation before states started opening up where that figure was far, far lower. And many states now have had to backtrack on opening back up, and it's really been a failure. There's no other way to look at it. The analogy I have is that you have a teenager, and that teenager has a curfew, and they break the curfew, so they get grounded. Well, they do their due diligence. They're grounded for, say, 3 weeks, and they do their schoolwork and they act appropriately. And so then you say, okay, you don't have to be grounded anymore. And in fact, I think you did so well, I'm not even going to put in a curfew as long as you act responsibly. And then the first night you go out, you stay out till 5 in the morning. I mean, that's really how we kind of react as a society, and it's resulted in what we have now. But as I said, as we turn specifically to sports, the leagues now that we see, the ones that have started, the ones that are trying to start, in this particular context, are trying to do better. And in some cases they have and will, and in some cases they haven't and or won't. Yesterday, the Kansas City Royals announced their 60-man roster. That gives us an indication that we're getting closer to perhaps having baseball by July 23rd or July 24th. No real big surprises on that. A lot of younger players included, but it gives us a taste of baseball. But because baseball has decided to go with a home stadium type of setup, we're going to see positive tests, and we're going to see how that impacts the ability to go forward. The economic issues are out of the way, basically unsuccessfully. It was just mandated by baseball that they would play a 60-game season, and now the Royals will play that 60-game season. And there's kind of varying opinions about how a sprint to the finish affects teams that maybe weren't given basically any kind of chance of being competitive. I think in general you probably can say that a shortened season can provide an advantage. But seeing as the Royals didn't even come close to any 60-game stretch last year where they played 500 baseball, that it's still a long shot for them to do it. But all you have to do is at the outset, and this is what I would hope that would happen, is that the Royals just come out and are hot for a couple of weeks at the beginning, because that basically would create an entire season or close to it of 60 games where the Royals were a viable and competitive team. But if they don't do that, on the other side, they really have to kind of just forget about the competitive aspects and go to the player development aspects of this, because there's no minor league season. Their younger players aren't going to get that type of thing, so they might as well play in these particular games and get some experience. But at least we can talk about baseball, talk about rosters, and talk about the possibility of seeing games, at least on television. Well, on television, no. In person, yes, for the Korean baseball organization. And, of course, that's sort of been a model for the rest of the world. They were the first to return to play. They now will be the first to have fans as of Friday, 30% at first and then 50%. Of course, South Korea was one of the nations that was most successful. They hardly had any cases from the very beginning, and they handled things very effectively as far as the coronavirus was concerned. And so that model really isn't one that others can particularly use because the case level was so low, but at least it gives an idea that there can be success stories, that fans can return in person to watch play. The NBA is working towards their return at the end of July, and they just released the results of their first testing, and 5.3% of the players tested were positive. They had 26 positive tests. We're just going to see numbers like this, and we'll get into some of the other sports a little bit later on. But we also see a landscape where significant players have already announced that they are not going to play in the bubble down at the Disney Wide World of Sports. And it's going to create a situation where we have to see if these things gather momentum, whether players look around and say, well, that significant player isn't playing, and there are no real repercussions for him except he's not going to make money. Maybe I'll do that too. That's where the danger lies, is in the fact of having a viable season or having a season that people take seriously. Now, the very biggest stars of the NBA have said that they're going to play, so it would appear that we're going to have NBA basketball, and they're doing it in what you do these days, I guess, is a really contrived setup for the end of the regular season with 8 games to be played and then a potential play-in little series for the playoffs. And the way they selected the amount of teams was basically absolutely positively in keeping with some big stars. They wanted Zion Williamson in there. They wanted Bradley Beal in there. And these players are on teams that basically probably shouldn't even be given the chance in the 22 teams. It probably should have been less teams. It probably should have just been, hey, the regular season's over. These 16 teams are in. We're going to play the playoffs. But they wanted more content. They wanted more things for people to watch. And so they came up with a situation which has actually more teams in one conference playing games than in the other conference. And it's really sort of goofy, to be honest, and it's But sports is show business. Sports is entertainment. And that's basically the side that the NBA took in providing entertainment more than fairness as far as crowning a champion is concerned. But really, the teams on the periphery of the playoff picture almost never make any kind of impact in the NBA, the most chalk playoff league in American sports. No question about that. Now, maybe this time around it'll be a little bit different because of the circumstances we have. We don't know what kind of great shape certain teams are in, but in all likelihood, the very best teams will be the teams that will be battling it out for the title, and this is all window dressing and providing extra content for television. We are just a couple of weeks away from MLS returning with their MLS Tournament is Back, and Sporting Kansas City will play on July 12th, and that will be in another bubble setting down in Orlando. And ironically, having a bubble in Orlando is seemingly contradictory because Florida has absolutely exploded as far as positive tests are concerned. But in that controlled environment and with testing and people not being able to come and go, they're hoping to make it go just like the NBA in basically a very similar setting. And so in less than 2 weeks, we will see MLS soccer back, and soccer has probably been the most successful returnee in Germany, in Italy, in Spain, and in England. And the Premier League just has started up in the past week, a barrage of games and entertainment for those who like the game of soccer. And it has been quite successful, not very many positive tests, and also impactful statements being made as far as the Black Lives Matter setting as well. So that probably is a good model for MLS, and we shall see if that works as well as international soccer has, which has been a pretty decent success story so far. As far as American football, gridiron football, as it were, there are big stories there, and we'll check in on those. Coming up next on Monday Musings, Danny Sports Wrap, are there serious competitors to the Kansas City Chiefs? Are the Patriots back? And will college football be played? And under what kind of settings, and the impact that college football athletes are trying to make as far as serious issues is concerned, and I think they probably are making them. All that coming up next.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Vision's goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300.
For many people, a family law case will be one of the most difficult experiences in their life. The law firm of Kenneth McRae will help you through it. Personal and effective help from Ken in concert with you will develop a unique strategy for your unique case. As Ken always says, divorce can be civil law, not civil war. Licensed in Kansas? Visit McRaeLawOffice.com or call 913-972-4765.
I'm here with Tim Emerson, the owner of Emerson & Company. And Tim, give us an idea of the range of services that you provide from Emerson & Company.
At Emerson & Company, we do credit card processing, payroll services. We do bookkeeping, merchant accounts like point-of-sale systems.
What would you say differentiates you from other companies in the field, and what makes you special?
I think what makes us unique is that we're a small local business making regional decisions on companies. We create a profile for the business and then put it out to our different vendors in a very competitive environment and tailor those needs to the specific business, which usually ends up in a great fit or great result for the company.
And, of course, the idea is to save money, right?
Save money, and actually sometimes I'm surprised where actually a solution that may cost a little bit more ultimately does save money, but we're not conditioned to think like that sometimes.
Emerson & Company. Check them out at emerson-co.com or call them at 816-360-9092. We're here with Joe Spiker, the CEO and president of Easton Roofing. And Joe, you had a great year in 2019, a record year. 2020 comes, things are moving smoothly along, and then the coronavirus comes. But your company seemed to be very ready, very proactive, and very ready to serve your customers well.
Yeah, we adopted social distancing very early before the cities even put out the notices. And we started working from home. We are largely cloud-based as a company, so that transition was easy. Our technicians are wearing masks and gloves, and salespeople are not meeting with homeowners. We're doing everything digitally and doing everything we can to do our part to get over this as quickly as possible.
So for any needs that people have right now, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, you can always call us, 913-257-5426. But the best way is to go to eastonroofing.com, put your information in, and we'll give you a call.
Easton Roofing. Integrity matters. If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at Danny@DannyKlinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Back on Monday Musings, Danny Sports Wrap, and the news from the Kansas City Chiefs is quietude. Isn't that nice? Basically, almost nothing is going on as far as the Chiefs, and the only thing that's bad about that is the fact that maybe a player or two, like Chris Jones, if you're a Chris Jones fan, has not signed a contract yet, but there's no real drama. There's no reason for that drama. We don't hear any negative things as far as the virus is concerned. The players are really making some impactful statements as far as Black Lives Matter, and including themselves in NFL videos. So the Chiefs are not really part of the news, and the big part of the news being made in the NFL today is from the New England Patriots, and they are doing it in a fashion that is neither political nor virus-related. It's actually football, and it's so Patriots. As a matter of fact, they make the big news football-wise by signing Cam Newton to an incentive-laden contract for 1 year. All the brave talk about Jared Stidham being the man that they have faith in seemingly goes out the window, and it would seem that Cam Newton is almost certain, if healthy, to be the starter, and if healthy, probably a pretty good one for the Patriots. Does that rise them to the level of competing with the Ravens and the Chiefs? No way, but it does that improve their football team and make them a viable threat to at least be a playoff team and some kind of long shot to perhaps challenge those top-heavy teams in the AFC? Yes, I guess. But the other side of it is the Patriots receive a big fat fine and are stripped of a third-round draft pick for shenanigans once again. And this time around, of course, it's from last year, where a video crew that supposedly was not associated with the football team but was an independent contractor that was making film about the inner workings of the Patriots. But, of course, guilt by association, guilt by past performance. They were filming the sidelines of the Cincinnati Bengals during a Browns-Bengals game. The Patriots are going to play Cincinnati upcoming. And this is just so unbelievably Patriots-like. It just seems like this team is so great over the past 2 decades. And they've had the best quarterback, and they've had the best coach. And they could win games without deflating footballs or Spygate or, in this case, filming the sidelines. But it just gives an indication of just how ruthless, how unbelievably overmotivated they are to get every last advantage necessary in the fact that they're filming the sideline of the Cincinnati Bengals, the team that just made the number 1 pick in the draft because they were the worst team in football. And probably a third-round pick and $1 million plus fine. It might be a little bit heavy a thing for what seems to be a trivial act, but it's just you're such a repeat offender. Whatever the Patriots get, you can't argue against. They accepted the penalty. They move on. They could probably live without a third-round draft pick coming up in the next draft. Probably not coincidentally, they actually announced the fact that they'd signed Cam Newton on the same day that these penalties came down. And it does make the Patriots a little more of an interesting team, and Cam Newton certainly can be used in a variety of different ways. He doesn't have a barrel full of weapons like Tom Brady will have down in Florida, where he is creating controversy of his own by holding team workouts against the suggestion of the National Football League and the National Football League Players Association, and Russell Wilson is kind of doing the same thing as well. Football players play football. The aerial footage of what Tom Brady was doing looked to be actually reasonably responsible distancing of the players, but we'll have to wait and see what the upshot of that is. We just had a situation in tennis where a series of exhibitions was staged. Djokovic organized it, and in the end, every single player who participated in it tested positive for coronavirus, and there was extensive criticism of those particular players for participating in that. They were charitable endeavors, but still they went against the recommendations of many people, and having players from a variety of countries come together in a single place, and they all ended up testing positive. So perhaps in the end, what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are doing to try to gain a football advantage will, in the end, backfire on them. We'll have to wait and see on that. But the Patriots, in their own way, creating news as far as on the field and off the field antics. I guess one thing is certain, that the Patriots do not care what people think about them, because outside of their circle, nobody likes the Patriots. They're not admired. They're just they're grudgingly admired, but certainly people don't root for them. I think in a game, if you took away Patriots fans, I can't imagine more than 5 to 8% of people root for the Patriots to win any particular big game that they're watching on television. And it'll probably be the same way, even with Cam Newton at the helm, but Bill Belichick still grumpily roaming the sidelines as the Patriots play them some football. Well, will college football be played this fall? It seems like they are hell-bent. I mentioned last week on Monday Musings-Danny SportsWrap that I thought that eventually some of these leagues or conferences or entities might just weary of the whole process and throw their hands in the air and say, well, let's wait till next year. Well, I just more and more don't think that's going to happen. Now, circumstances may force the hand of these teams, but you look at Clemson, they've had 37 positive tests. That basically is a third of their squad, even if you expand it over 100 with all the walk-ons and everything else, and they just are continuing on practicing. Now, these are young men. Many of them don't show symptoms. Many of them don't really get sick. So I guess, but Kansas State seemed to be on the more responsible side. They had 14 tests, and they shut down their workouts. But we see Texas with a large amount of tests. They keep working out. Clemson, 37 positive tests. They keep working out. And so it seems like more and more people are going to try and play football, but more and more you also hear people saying, well, we think we might be able to play 9 games or 10 games. Conferences are looking at and or have backed up their schedules as far as their conference championship games to have the ability to perhaps have makeup games in December before they play their conference championship. That particular aspect of it, college football, I think is far more in peril than the NFL, because these are younger people who are not in a bubble. And, for instance, apparently Kansas State, basically after they came back to campus, tested. I don't think they had maybe but one positive test, but after a week of practice, they had a couple days off. A bunch of guys went to a lake party. Some other guys got together to play video games, and they contracted the virus. And you are starting to see that the governments and counties and cities are starting to pinpoint the fact that young people returning to bars is creating a spike in many particular cases, because they now, again, see the freedom that they are given and don't perhaps handle it in particularly the right way. But there's also a certain bulletproof nature to healthy, strapping football players, for instance, who probably feel like going out to a lake party and standing outside and having a few beers is not any kind of danger to them. And in the end, it may really not be that big a danger to them, but it may be a danger to others. And when you test positive for this, it's not good in any way, shape, or form. And then who are you mingling with? Are you going home? Are you seeing older people? Are you going to the store without a mask on? All those type of things. So, but I guess the overriding message is that college football does seem determined to try to play at least some portion or some level of a football season. Maybe more importantly, both at Kansas State and in Mississippi, players are trying to use their voice. They're feeling empowered in new and different ways. And Mississippi legislature over the weekend decided to take the rebel flag portion of their state flag and off. Basically a tiny corner, not a tiny corner, a significant corner of the flag was basically a replica of the rebel flag as part of the overall state flag. And that is going to be changed, and the Confederate flag portion is going to be taken off. And I think sports had a real impact on that. You had basketball players from Mississippi who had transferred saying that the state flag was at least part of the reason why they felt uncomfortable in Mississippi. You saw Mississippi and Mississippi State football players threaten not to play. And I think that even for people who hold, for whatever reason, the Confederate flag dear to their heart, you're like, well, now they're messing with our football. Our football players are not going to play if we don't do this. I guess I don't care so much about this flag. And so legislators who probably in the past would have been fearful of casting a vote to change the flag of Mississippi did so over the weekend, and it will change. And at Kansas State, after a ridiculous tweet came out by a student of an organization who has kind of made some volatile jokes, as it were. They aren't funny. One about George Floyd. And K-State's players have put out statements. Actually, it wasn't really a unified statement. It was a variety of different statements, but basically saying that they might not play if the university did not act in a strong way to change the atmosphere where tweets like that are greeted as jokes. And I think you're just going to see more and more of this, and I think it maybe makes people uncomfortable, but if you have a platform and you have the ability to say, this is not right, and football isn't that important, and I just won't play, and universities realize that they're on the right side of the argument in many cases, and in some cases they'll probably overstep their bounds, but I think the power that athletes can use and are starting to realize can have impact is an important thing. And it's going to make some people uncomfortable, and really change is uncomfortable. That's just the bottom line. And if either having an impact on starting to eradicate or at least lessen the effects of the virus can be done by behavior, then you're going to have to mandate behavior. And if progress isn't being made as far as racial attitudes and racial injustice is concerned, you're going to have to raise your voice in an uncomfortable manner. And I think those things are really kind of similar in a way, and both in Mississippi and in Kansas. We see that football players feel like they have a voice, and it's a powerful voice, and I think in both cases they have a chance for change. And in the Mississippi case, I think they were a big part of having change. And finally, the world of golf has come in on this particular thing on the virus side of it as well, as they seem to have eased back in the first couple of weeks successfully to playing under controlled circumstances. But according to several sources, and one of those is Pat Perez, he has a actually wildly entertaining satellite radio show called Out of Bounds. He does it with Michael Collins, the former caddy and stand-up comedian and contributor to ESPN, and the show is definitely out of bounds. Pat Perez has some cocktails while he's doing the show. There's a lot of profanity. It's loud. It's out there. And Pat Perez is sort of the anti-PGA golfer. PGA Tour is a pretty conservative organization by nature, and Pat Perez is not. And on his show last week, he just talked about how the atmosphere on tour or in the surrounding areas, they were at Hilton Head Island the previous week, was just as if everything was back to normal. He went out to do takeout food and said that it was such a what he considered scary environment with no masks and shoulder-to-shoulder crowds that he didn't even pick up his food. And he basically said that the players on tour were kind of treating it as business as usual. And that is what we've seen in many, many settings. And so now 7 different caddies, players, tested positive last week and or decided to remove themselves from the field because they're in contact with other people. And that's probably going to grow. And here we go again, because the players apparently hadn't taken it as seriously as they should have, and most of the time people were saying they kind of did, but I think you get a look under the covers basically from an actual professional golfer on site like Pat Perez, and now they are putting in far more restrictive implementation of rules this particular week on the PGA Tour. They escalated things significantly, and in fact the commissioner threatened serious action to players who weren't abiding by the rules, which gives you a clear indication that they weren't. And that's what we've seen in case after case after case now. Voluntary behavior has not been effective enough so that stronger, stricter implementation of real rules has been put in place. more importantly, on the governmental level, and far less importantly, on the sports level, as in the world of PGA golf, where, as far as on the course is concerned, for the 13th consecutive year, Dustin Johnson won a golf tournament, as he did it yesterday in Hartford, and that is quite an accomplishment, and only Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods have a streak longer than that, 17 apiece for the two iconic older players, 14 for Tiger, and of course that probably would have been a lot longer if it wasn't waylaid by injury and personal problems. But on a pure golf note, and we'll end up on a sports note, quite an accomplishment from Dustin Johnson, 13 consecutive years winning a golf tournament. So there's another largely sports, sort of, edition of Monday Musings, Danny Sports Wrap, and we'll see where we're at next Monday. It always seems to change. 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I don't know. You decide. And we'll be back at it next Monday. And, of course, all through the week, we have a variety of different things to bring you right here at DannyKlinkskill.com and the Reasonably Irreverent podcast. But for this Monday and Monday Musings and Danny Sports Wrap, I say so long.
This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like Easton Roofing, the presenting sponsor of Kansas City Profiles at the Danny Klink Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Easton Roofing, where integrity matters. We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Klink Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new.